Good morning, everyone.
Hello.
Good morning.
Okay.
Good
Uh, shall
morning.
we shall we start, Ari? Okay. Good afternoon, everyone, and hope you had a very nice morning or afternoon or night, so whichever time difference you are from. Different time zone, I should say. And today, um, before I go on to introduce the presenter for today's session on nonviolent communication, I just once again would like to repeat the announcement that we made yesterday that do not worry about the marking your attendance on my class, because as you most of you, many of you in fact have experienced a computer glitch and has been a source of frustration. So we decided that we don't want you to continue being terribly frustrated with all this aspect of the my class engagement. So don't worry about it, and we will mark your attendance manually, and Sasha, who will keep track of everyone daily through the Zoom. As soon as you log on Zoom, we will have the record as to who has attended and who hasn't. And the other thing too is that we have also taken note of several of you who have participated actively. And once again, we want to thank all of you for being such marvelous participants. In fact, this is one of the things that the presenters have their own, we have our own WhatsApp group, and the presenters, almost every day, some of them have been urging the others, and we have like Jenny Murphy sort of saying go team, sort of urging each other to to do the very best in our presentations. And the one common thing that has feedback from all the presenters so far, the ones who have come on before today's session, they have complimented all of you. They said that it was so exciting for them to get onto this session, their session, and to meet such marvelous participants from all over the world. So do pat yourself on the back and say that you all have done, a remarkable, incredible job participating in this course. And despite the problems that we face, in the sense that we have being virtually connected and online sort of discussion, we are not face to face, we unable to make eye contact with one another. And despite all these things that we have been talking about, the importance in terms of how we should engage with one another, interact face to face. But here, unfortunately, due to the pandemic, we it has necessitated this kind of engagement. But nevertheless, all of you have made such a marvelous job in bridging this kinds of gaps that we have in terms of being in different parts of the world. Okay, now I have great deal of pleasure to invite someone who I've met quite recently, I should say, but in the process we've got to know each other really well, and largely because we share a lot of different common values and common aspirations, and particularly in terms of the kinds of values that we place on non-violence engagement. Dr. Vedabhyas is a program officer, program coordinator for the Gandhi Symmetry Darshan Samata. And recently we got in contact with one another, and he subsequently invited me to do a number of different talks for the GSDS. And I was quite taken aback when one fine day he contacted me and asked me whether I'll be willing to be interviewed for a book that the GSDS had come up, a volume which I think has 20 evidently prominent peace scholars right around the world, and Dr. Vedabhyas has interviewed each one of them and has published the interview in a collection that is due to come out soon. And I don't think I'm a deserving member of this very illustrious group of peace workers, but it was very kind of him to, invite me to be one of the 20 global peace uh, workers. And why I feel that I'm not deserving is because I don't think, well, one, I don't think I'm prominent, and two, I don't think I'm very much a peace scholar in comparison to all the various people that are featured in this book. And the book is will be out soon, or it has actually been printed. It's published. We are just waiting for it to be launched. And the person who is going to launch it is no other than the Dalai Lama. And so it is such an important uh, volume, and I'm so pleased to be involved in it. And we continue to work very closely, um, the Deep Network and GSDS. So I'm not going to take any more time, which is likely to be a very interesting practical session on nonviolent communication from the perspective of Gandhian perspective. And and so thank you. Now it's all yours, Veda, and I shall sit here and be and learn from you.
Thank you, sir. A very good morning, rather good afternoon from India. It's already about 12:30 out here. It's a great honor and a privilege that Professor Alberto Gomes, sir, has invited me for this very, very prestigious course on peace and conflict transformation. Also very honored with the university in Indonesia and all our friends with whom we are interacting, all the esteemed presenters for this course and all the esteemed participants in this course. It is a great occasion. We are really honored to be part of this whole process, and I'm sure we will be able to work further on this. Also, what Professor Alberto Gomes was talking about this book, may I now give the information that, sir, His Holiness the Dalai Lama has given the date of September 1st for the release of this book, and he's also going to inaugurate one of our, Mahatma Gandhi Interpretation Center out here. Thank you very much once again, all the participants. In this whole session, what we are going to do is probably an hour. We will have through PowerPoint, we will try to explore our travel, try to have a journey to try to understand the different dimensions of nonviolent communication. And then we have a quiz for you. In fact, I'm there with my our technical head here in Gandhi Smriti, Mr. Pankaj, who will help us with the quiz. Also, we have we have almost say about a 2.5-hour session, so we will have a lot of time for some discussion. So we have some points for discussions also. So if sir, if you permit, can we start formally the session now? So we can start, sir? Yes. So we can start with the PowerPoint, and we will also have some videos for you for some of the people. In fact, I will share with you how Gandhi Smriti has been involved in this whole initiative on non-violent communication, not just at the national level, but at a global level. So we will share some videos of some of our participants. So we start this whole program on the whole idea of non-violent communication, which is a pivotal thing, which is the fulcrum of any peace process, which is the fulcrum of any peace building activities. So we now start with the PowerPoint presentation. May I request the participants if my visuals are, if you can see the PowerPoint? Is it
Yes, yes, we
visible?
can see it. Yes.
Sir? Okay, okay. Fine. We start with this very profound, quote of Mahatma Gandhi, who said that the world will live in peace only when the individuals composing it make up their minds to do so. So, friends, it is definitely an important aspect how we as individuals, how we ensure, how we work incessantly towards a whole culture of peace and non-violence. And related to this is UNESCO in 2013, and as part of their program of action and culture of peace and non-violence, here it is. Peace should never be taken for granted. It is an ongoing process, a long-term goal which requires constant engineering, vigilance, and active participation by all individuals. It is a choice to be made on each situation and everyday life decision to engage in sincere dialogue with other individuals and communities, whether they live a block or a click away. So friends, first, very important, how we as individuals can contribute towards the culture of peace. Then important point is that it's not just a short-term thing where we do some, patchwork and say that basically there is peace. It is basically a long-term goal and it needs a constant endeavor. It needs a constant participation of all individuals in the society. It requires sincere dialogue and between individuals and the communities. So with that background in mind, also here when we are talking of peace building, when we are talking of how we can all contribute to the peace processes, it would entail so many different activities, so many different ideas. So in that context, when we are talking of peace building, one of the most important, and when also in the context of any conflict transformation, as we will see later, one of the most critical and the most important pillar and a fulcrum, what I can say, is communication. If there is a dysfunctional communication, if there is a breakdown in communication, then there cannot be any peace. On the other hand, if we have a peaceful communication ecosystem, if our communication ecosystem is peaceful, there is
Prof. Gomez, I think Vedabhyas has got a trouble here. Internet
yeah, I
connection
think,
here.
yeah, possibly. So if you don't mind just waiting, sorry about this.
am I audible now?
Yeah,
Sir?
yeah. Okay,
yeah.
now you're back.
Yeah, there is a problem of electricity out here. So it is going and coming. So that is the whole issue.
Okay, that's all right. We can continue going until the next electrical blackout.
Yes, please. This is all part of life. Can't do much about it.
Yeah, that's fine.
Fine. Yeah. So this was UNESCO. So as I was saying, in the context of peace building and in the context of conflict transformation, the fulcrum is communication. So in that context today, friends, we will try to understand on the importance of non-violent communication. In fact, at a global level, and not just at the national level, but also at the global level, Gandhi Smriti and Darshan Samiti has been doing different work on how non-violent communication can be integrated into different disciplines like communication and media studies, like peace studies, like in the study of law and study of education in different aspects. So in that today we will try to understand this whole idea, this whole notion of communication, non-violent communication. But before that, well, the importance of communication in our life. Well, friends, in fact, this is something which in many of my workshops, I try to build the whole atmosphere. We try to come up with this whole notion, like, and why communication is as important as the food that we take and the air that we breathe in. Just imagine, probably overnight, you might have ended up taking some food which had got rotten, and there is a possibility that you might have ended up having food poisoning. Similarly, in many of our friends in many cities across the world, you will find that the air quality in your cities are really going bad. There is so much a problem of pollution, and that actually results in a lot of respiratory problems, asthma, so on and so forth. So the food or the air that we breathe in are so important, the good quality. Similarly is the importance of communication. Here, in this case, if I'm a student of communication and I'm going to my first ever class in that communication studies, we will be told the first most basic definition of communication. We cannot not communicate. In fact, how we communicate and what we communicate determines our relationships with others. And as I said, the food and the air that we breathe in are so important, their quality. In the same way, communication. If possibly, just imagine that you have had a very bad, fight with your friend or someone, and you end up, having a big fight. So then it will actually end up in a situation where you will feel frustrated, you will be stressed out. So in that context, in the next 2 minutes, can we possibly, if the audience can share in the chat box, if you had a bad fight with your close friend and both of you use foul language, does it have any impact on you in any way? Is there, if I can request other participants, if they want to write something in the chat box in this, if they have 2 minutes, let us give ourselves 2 minutes to write in the chat box. You can help to see in the chat box. Okay. If you could kindly, if a few of you could write in your chat boxes. Yes. Does it happen? Yes, definitely. Okay, little bit. Obviously. Yes, Alia says yes, and I feel bad of using it and I apologize. Then someone says that I will not engage in a discussion where the foul language we use. It gives a bad impact because it always makes me regret it for a long time. That's so important. You see how it impacts us. It impacts us deeply. We become stressed. Possibly in the morning you have a fight with your friend, and at night while you are retiring to bed, you will feel so frustrated. Why possibly we actually ended up doing this? So you can see how important is the good food, a healthy air that you breathe in, and similarly a healthy communication. Because in each one of them, if we are ending up with some unhealthy kind of a situation, then it will have impact on us. Okay, now we go to the next slide, please. In that context, we could let us all reflect, possibly in the session after this brief introduction to nonviolent communication, we can start reflecting how our communication help molds our reactions, the inner working of our mind. And in fact, is our thoughts, is our ideas that generates in our mind. So in that context, we go to the next slide. And this is a very profound quote of Buddha, who says that words have both the power to destroy and heal. When words are both true and kind, they can change our world. So let us reflect the words that we are using while talking to someone or writing to someone or expressing ourselves. they're so important, because it actually can destroy a relationship. It can destroy so many situations, but it can also be something which can heal. It can give a healing touch, and history shows us so many interesting examples of these. Also, in this context, this is a very important quote of the Mahatma, who says that I object to violence because when it appears to do good, the good is only temporary, the evil it does is permanent. Just let us, try to impose it in the context of communication. If we are into violent communication, if we are, aggressive, then possibly many of us feel that, it gives us a feel good factor for a few minutes or a few hours, that we have actually, overwhelmed the other person with whom we are arguing or fighting. But possibly that had actually resulted in such situation where actually the relationship has ended. So many instances you will find from your daily lives. So the evil, the problem that it creates is actually permanent. So in that context, can someone, if anyone from the audience, from the participants can share, they can raise their hand on how do we handle a dysfunctional communication system. We have already talked on some situation that were there where we have become aggressive, or probably how we handle, say, issues, situations of hate speech or toxic communication. Is there anyone who would like to share some points in that? Is there anyone who can raise their hand and speak, or you want to share it in the chat box? Can anyone share in the chat box how do we handle, how they have handled the situation? Yes, raise there. Christina Cabreja Artola. Yes, please. Christina. Yes, please.
Yes. Usually when the situation arises, when one party shouts and screams, the way I have handled always is just by letting that person know that that was not the right time to talk. And usually that will be a customer. And I will always say to the customer that I will be calling them back, and then we could resume the conversation at a later stage, but not now. And then just leave it like that. And by the time you call them back, they would have had the time to calm down a little bit, drink a little bit of water. And the conversation usually flows much better.
That's right. Also, some others have also raised their hand. Nikita, I find. And then Adibola. Yes, Nikita?
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes, please.
Yeah, so how do we handle a dysfunctional communication system? I think it's important to, is this in relation to hate speech, or is that a separate question?
No, because overall, how do you handle it, whether it is a situation of toxic communication or hate speech? How do you handle, have you ever handled such a situation?
Okay, well, I will tackle the question of hate speech because I think it's such a pervasive topic in today's world, especially online. We have a lot of persons sending these aggressive type messages, and it's hard sometimes because we can't identify who that person is. But in terms of our communication channels, I think we need to have more ethical, if it's technological ways, we need to have an ethical system where we flag those persons who are pushing hate speech. And if it's directly in front of you, I think to try to handle the hate speech is to let that person see, I see you, but not to reciprocate that negative energy. So to break that negative line of communication by giving, whether it doesn't even have to be a word, it could be just silence, letting that person see you and let them know that, okay, I see you, but I will not continue with this conversation by saying anything negative towards you. So trying to disperse it, yeah.
Ethical communication is the key words that emerges from your ideas. Adibola, please.
Yeah, thank you, Doctor. There's a popular saying from my local parlance here. It said that a moment of silence in a moment of anger is greater than a million moments of regret. Usually, I handle such issue by being silent. Silence is a means of frustrating the other party to the conflict. It isn't that you are stupid or you have admitted fault, but you have saved the situation by being silent. In the course of that, you get to know that the other party to the conflict might want to see you as, this man has not been talking, has not been responding. Eventually, he or she will get frustrated and embrace peace with you. Thank you, sir.
Yes, there is others also. Just one more. We will have a full-fledged discussion session. So any one of you could share. We have yes,
Okay.
Lilane. Yes.
Okay.
Yes, please.
Is it me? Oh, okay. I would love to share the same point of view from everyone. And also we need to start learning to say no when we hit any hate speech from anyone, because when you start saying for the people, no, this is wrong, it's correct. And also we need to use the youth, the new generation, because nowadays everyone is on social media. So we need to use this in a positive way to encourage people to stop doing this and to start being positive with everyone. And that's all.
Okay, be positive with everyone. Well, there are three
May
more.
I speak, sir?
Yes, esteemed participants who would like to share. If we could just share the keywords, because then we go to the next slide. We have Tuba Ahmed, Alifa Abbas, and Lilane. If you could
Sir,
kindly.
Tuba Ahmed here. I will try to be very precise and very quick. Sir, there is I think I use three ways. On social media, I tend to ignore because I don't know those people who are saying something and tweeting something, so I try to ignore them. I don't say anything about what I am saying. But if my friend or my relatives are complaining me or like using toxic words, then I let them speak. Because if their anger comes out from their self, so they can be very polite with me and we can understand what is the problem. So I use these two. For unknown people, I ignore them on social media, but with my relatives, my friends, so I give them space so they can speak, and that is all.
Okay, okay. Yes,
I
please.
have same keyword. The keyword is ignore. I was in IELTS country. They said the culture there is you just ignore. That's the best punishment.
Well, I could not follow properly. If you could be clearer, because it's some network issues possibly.
The keyword is same, ignore. I was in IELTS country.
Okay.
They told me
Perfect.
the culture is to ignore, because that's the best punishment.
Okay. That's right. That's right. Would you like to share, or we go to the next slide?
Hello, you gave me the to speak, but someone else spoke instead. I wanted like a little bit from a more biological point of view. When a communication gets to be more tense and toxic, then we need like to breathe in and breathe out, like to let the oxygen enter to our body, to detox. So this way it helps us to relax and go on with more, with a healthier conversation, let's say, or healthier communication. So I would ask people when the communication gets more tense, to relax, to breathe in, take a deep breath. This is what we say when someone gets angry or tensed or so, or stressed out. So I would go for like breathing exercise, and then
Yes.
to calm
I
down.
totally agree with you. That's a mindfulness exercises that you're referring to, the
Definitely.
mindfulness practice. And, you know, in fact, mindfulness, in fact, incidentally, Gandhi Smriti is running also a course on mindfulness and how we can, you know, engage people through these mindfulness practices. And also we have worked out how mindfulness and non-violent communication are similar aspect and similar in nature, actually. And in that context, you know, when we have a global, in fact, if you our friends remember, in 2019, the United Nations came up with a UN plan of action and strategies and plan of action to combat hate speech. And there is this famous Gandhian from India. Of course, he's no more, Mr. Natwar Thakkar, and he had done amazing work on Gandhian constructive work here in India. He has a very interesting point to say in the context of, he just passed away 2 years back. So he is talking about how the challenge before communicators today, the need for communicators today is to challenge the attempts to divide people on the basis of class, religion, and race. The communication education, to my mind, should integrate the values of pluralism, mutual respect, and inclusivity. It should not be a vehicle to sensationalize or incite passion, but a lesson to practice self-restraint and principles of non-violence in all aspects. So this is something we, all of us, I think this is a challenge for each one of us on how our communication, the education, communication, education should integrate, should be inclusive, pluralistic in approach, and ensure mutual respect. So in that context, we have so far traversed and tried to lay the foundation of why we need an communication ecosystem, which is essentially non-violent in nature, because it actually entails not just as an individual, how we get affected because of unhealthy communication ecosystem, but also probably our immediate family, our institutions, the communities, how it suffers because of unhealthy communication ecosystem, and hence the need to develop a non-violent communication ecosystem at a global level. So when we are talking of non-violent communication ecosystem and what we see here, there are so many different practices of non-violent communication at a global level. What we see it as a holistic communication approach. Because we are talking, it talks about the values of human interconnectedness. It encompasses our intrapersonal communication, interpersonal communication, communication with the society at large, communication with nature, and communication with all other living beings. Because friends, as we are all living, each one of our countries are affected by the pandemic. And I remember last year when the whole world was just the beginning of the pandemic, I remember this beautiful article by the famous British primatologist, Dr. Jane Goodall. And Dr. Jane Goodall had to say that how we human beings are actually destroying the habitats of the wildlife in a big way, and how the wildlife are coming closer and closer to the human habitat, and that could be a source of greater transmission of different kind of viruses to the human beings. So when we are talking of human interconnectedness, it is not just a connection between the human to human, but also the nature and all other living beings. And when we are talking of communication with nature, we are talking of a symbolic communication with nature, a symbolic communication with other living beings. Such an important aspect. Unless and until that is an underlining feature, if we are not really serious about this whole understanding of human interconnectedness. I remember this brilliant, in fact, even now here in India, all the participants who have taken part in that Peace and Nonviolence lecture, which Gandhi Smriti organized and which Professor Alberto Gomes sir had delivered on the issue of human interconnectedness. Unless and until we assimilate it, unless and until we are committed to it in all aspects, including the communicative aspect, we are in for trouble, and as that has been flagged off by the 2020 Human Development Report. So also, when we are talking of non-violent communication, and we will have a separate discussion on that, on why non-violent communication is an essential 21st century skill that we need to acquire. Here are some of the interesting, this WHO had come some years back on the life skills that are essential for 21st century. It had talked about the decision-making and problem-solving abilities, creative thinking and critical thinking abilities, communication and interpersonal skills, self-awareness and empathy, and coping with emotions and coping with stress. These are all all are interconnected, all are important. So in that context, in fact, when we have the discussion session, we will discuss on why nonviolent communication is definitely an important 21st century skill that we all need to acquire. Well, now to start with, when we are talking about what exactly is nonviolent communication, let us. Okay, what we will do is we will show these videos towards the end of this session, because what we will do is actually, I was working in one particular computer, and unfortunately the electricity went away. So I have come to some other office where there is some electricity, and I'm working for there. There's videos are there in the other computer. So my technical associate will bring those videos, and then we will show you on some of these very interesting videos from different participants. We now go to the next slide, and we start with on the important elements and important dimensions of nonviolent communication. And we start with this very first important dimensions of nonviolent communication. This is an important, interesting quote which is related by Abraham Lincoln. He says that we can complain because rose bushes have thorns, or rejoice because thorn bushes have roses. Just see how it is so important. In that context, basically, when we are using nonviolent communication, we develop skills to reframe our thoughts and communication. Here, I would like to give you an example. You see, we have been doing this workshop for different sections of the society, right from the judiciaries to the police to teachers to students and so on and so forth. I remember almost 2 years back, that was in 2019, when I was conducting this session for the judicial officers and lawyers of a particular district court here in Delhi. And then after a month, I went back to that whole session. I went back to these participants, and then we had a feedback session of them on the last 1 month, whether they were able to bring in some pointers or not. In that context, one of the president of the Bar Association, over there, he said, you see, we lawyers have, probably many of you will agree with me, in many of the cases, you will find that lawyers are many times attuned to take up their cases, in a very aggressive manner in front of the bench. So this president of the Bar Association said that after your session, I realized that, you see, there are so many different ways of putting up my point. At the end of the day, I'm trying to defend my client. But how I argue the case of my client in front of the bench is something very important. I can do it very aggressively. I can also do it using the strategies of nonviolent communication, which he said he had started using it, putting the same thing, the same point in the same way, but in a totally different way, using words and techniques and strategies. And he felt that in the last 1 month, ever since he started using that strategy, he was able to put his argument in a much better way, which had a better effect in front of the bench. So nonviolent communication, to start with, helps us develop skills on how we reframe our thoughts and communication and the language that we are using it. Many of us feel that the language that we are using, that is something that is normal, but probably if we start searching for it, searching for the techniques of nonviolent communication, we'll find that it has helped us to put it in a totally different way, which is more engaging. Also, friends, at this stage, I would like to point out that it is not that if we are having a session today and we give you a magical formula A plus B equals to C and you become a non-violent communicator. Not at all. It is a process. You have to be committed to yourself. Yes, I want to use it as part of my daily habits. And also it can be, realized over a period of time. It is not something, there cannot be any shortcut, which I feel, to this. Well, from our perspective, you see, Gandhi Smriti is the place where Mahatma Gandhi was assassinated. So we see non-violent communication mainly from the Gandhian perspective. And of course, we bring in other great thinkers of this, like Thich Nhat Hanh, we have Dr. Daisaku Ikeda, we bring in the perspectives of Martin Luther King, Nelson Mandela. Also, we bring in the perspectives of Dr. Marshall Rosenberg. So our approach is more encompassing, but primarily we talk about using the Gandhian model. To start with, when we are talking of non-violent communication, we look at some of the important pillars of it, something which rests. You see a building, if a building has pillars and the pillars are not strong, then there is a possibility of they being, that building collapsing. So what are the 5? Here we talk about and introduce the 5 pillars of Gandhian non-violence. And these are very simple, these are very universal. That is most important part of it. It's very, very universal, these 5 principles, 5 pillars. The first is respect, understanding, acceptance, appreciation, compassion. So the first is respect. Friends, most of the disputes, most of the problems start because probably we may not have adequate respect for each other. So respect is something very fundamental. If we start having that whole thing within us, that we respect each other, then it becomes something very, very important. So let us start. If we respect each other, we might have differences. I might have differences with you, but if I respect you, then there is a possibility that even if we are able to get over with those, disputes or differences in a much, much constructive way. And also, friends, when we have respect each other, then it helps us to understand each other. Because if I don't respect you, then it is very difficult to have any understanding of your viewpoints. And again, much of the problem starts because, that I don't want to understand each other. So respect, basic thing. Respect leads to better understanding. And when I'm able to understand your point of view, it becomes much easier to accept your position. Again, that is another issue, because the problem starts is that I'm having my own ego. I have a problem with you. I have a difference of opinion with you. And I feel that I will stick to my position and not accept your position. I feel your position is wrong. So respect leads to greater understanding, and greater understanding leads to greater acceptance of each other's position. The next important pillar is appreciation. Well, friends, in fact, we have been doing this workshop for large number of universities, not just within India, but across the world. And one of the important points which many of the participants feel, especially in today's world, when the pandemic and so many pressures, and we are all running for our materialistic goals, so on and so forth, the individualistic society in many parts of the world, probably we have stopped, having positive appreciation. We possibly are not able to search for those positive things that are going around that in the world. Most of the time we get overwhelmed with the negativities. We get up in the morning and see our WhatsApp messages, this and that, and there are so many negative news, negative things happening across the globe, and we feel so frustrated and feel that everything in the world is going in a complete disaster. No, not at all. There are so many positive things happening around us. There are so many positive things happening around the world. And if we are able to bring those positive appreciation, it will help us to evoke more positive energies. And when we are able to, have these positive vibrations and energies, we will be much healthier. We will be able to, handle things in a much better way. And our communication inherently is likely to be more positive. And the fifth pillar is compassion, which we are going to talk in details when we are talking about the elements of nonviolent communication. Now, this is the explanation of what exactly is nonviolent communication, because when we are going to go for our discussions, we will talk about some of these ways on how we can promote nonviolent communication in our, in our communities. Like I remember talking only last week to a senior Malaysian advocate. She's a lawyer, and she was talking about how she wants to introduce nonviolent communication amongst her friends who are lawyers in Malaysia. She's from Kuala Lumpur. And in fact, I shared our course on nonviolent communication with us. And she said that it's so important when we are talking of nonviolent communication in the study of law, in the study of research in law, and as in the context of people doing into the whole profession of lawyers. So these are some of the interesting things that happens. And she feels that her name is Intan, and she was talking about how important it is to imbibe these values of nonviolent communication. So let us try to understand what exactly is nonviolent communication. Well, friends, there are so many explanations across. You will find, definition. As if I'm a student, I will always be interested to first find out what is the explanation or a definition of a particular new concept which I'm trying to assimilate. So I have been doing a lot of research in this area, and I think one of the most comprehensive understanding or explanation of, in short, comes from this, again, this very senior Gandhian here in India, Mr. Natwar Thakur. He says, to me, nonviolent communication literacy, you see, he was concerned that the way our communication ecosystem is deteriorating, we need to be nonviolent communication literate. Like we talk about eco-literacy, we talk about cultural literacy, we talk about financial literacy, media literacy, so on and so forth. Critical understanding of that particular area. So he feels that we need to be nonviolent communication literate in 21st century. He feels that, to me, nonviolent communication literacy would mean how our communication efforts should be nonviolent, how our ability and capacity to communicate not only with ourselves but with our family and society be nonviolent in all aspects, and overall how the entire process of communication, whether between individuals, groups, communities, and the world at large, should be non-violent in nature. So you see, it is an all-encompassing idea which he tries to share in the context of non-violent communication. In fact, he further says this would entail deep understanding of the art and science of non-violence and its centrality in all our daily actions. It is not just verbal and non-verbal communication. Non-violent communication literacy would also include whether our thoughts and ideas are non-violent or not. So important, because I may be, expressing myself, I may be very non-violent in my verbal communication that I am doing with you, but at the back of my mind, I might have very great ill feeling for you. So that is definitely not non-violence. That is not non-violent communication, because today or tomorrow, this, this ill will, this negativities will get reflected in my communication with you. And also, friends, how the efficacy of nonviolent communication. This was the explanation, the efficacy of nonviolence communication. I will share with you an interesting example. There is this friend of mine who is, of course, an international trainer, which in fact, Lilane was talking about the mindfulness practices. He is an international mindfulness trainer. His name is Dharmacharya Shantam Seth. He's from India, but he does a lot of these mindfulness workshops for companies and groups and people across the world. I was sitting at his home one day, and he wanted a courier of his to be delivered. Generally here, we would know he wanted his driver to come and take that courier to be given to that courier company. Generally, in general, what we will do is we'll call the driver and say that please come and take this courier. Just see the words that he used. Firstly, when he was trying to call his driver, he said, I hope you're not busy now. So in a very, very sweet tone. And of course, the driver said no. So it was around 5:30 in the evening. And then he comes. And again, in general, for most of us, we will say that, well, this is the amount for the courier and this is the packet and we please go and give. But again, you mark the way he says. He says that, well, if you go now, I hope you will not be, stressed out. I hope you will not feel bad if you, go now and give this courier. You see, he's talking to his driver and he is someone like he's a boss, but he is so humble and the words that he's using. Of course, the driver was obviously, he, generally my own experience says that whenever you are trying to, reframe like these, the way you speak, you are actually making the other person, in most of the cases, of course, we are living in a world where we should not think of an utopian situations. But in most of the situation which I felt was that you make virtually the other person, defenseless, I should say, because you are saying, I hope you are not, I hope it is not going to bother you if you kindly go and give the courier now. And immediately the driver said, no, not at all, not at all. So this is something we need to keep in mind when we are talking about the whole essence of nonviolent communication. So now we come to the elements of nonviolent communication. Well, my friend has brought this video when we were talking about, I was trying to share with you this video of Mallika Hussaini, who is from the Herat province of Afghanistan. And in fact, we have, through the virtual, this online mode, we have conducted some of these workshops of some of these students from Afghanistan on nonviolent communication. So let me share with you this video of Mallika Hussaini.
Dear friends, I'm Mallika Hussaini from the beautiful city of Herat in Afghanistan, and I have finished the Arianjan course on nonviolent communication being offered by Gandhi Samriti and Darshan Samiti in New Delhi, India. And I have now started practicing nonviolent communication and also trying to motivate my friends to do the same. And I feel nonviolent communication is healthy communication and encourages us to be more human. And an important thing which I learned is nonviolent communication entails and not just communication with other fellow beings, but also with our inner self and nature and all the other living beings, and it helps us develop peaceful and harmonious communication ecosystems. And practicing nonviolent communication helps us to contribute towards a culture of peace, solidarity, and nonviolence. It is so important in today's world as we tend to get agitated and aggressive easily. And the Gandhian principles of nonviolence, respect for all, including nature and other living beings, understanding, acceptance, positive appreciation, and compassion are the foundation of the nonviolent communication. And if we follow these principles, there will be harmony and meaningful resolution of differences. And I strongly feel nonviolent communication is a life skill which should be introduced right from the school level. Thanks to all of your kind attention, and I look forward to hearing from all of you. And together, let us try to encourage everyone to practice nonviolent communication in their daily lives.
Thank you. Can I speak? Well, I hope you could hear that. Friends, I hope the video was clear. Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Quite clear, sir.
Okay, sir. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you. So now we continue our session, and here now when we have already tried to understand what exactly is nonviolent communication, and now we will focus on what are the important elements of nonviolent communication. Friends, each of these elements are equally important, and also they're interconnected and interwoven. So let us try to find out these elements here. Friends, so nonviolent communication, the first important element, which Mr. Natwar Thakkar had also talked about in his explanation of nonviolent communication, it means complete lack of violence in the way we communicate with others, be it verbal, non-verbal, our thoughts and ideas. It's so important how we can practice it, how we can practice not being aggressive at every moment or point of time. The second important element of nonviolent communication is understanding of the self-awareness, and which is linked to the constructive self-talk and inner dialogue. In fact, it's a very, very important. Huh? May I ask the participants whether the PPT is working?
No. It's not working, sir.
No.
Right now it's not working, but before
No, it's not working.
Okay, it's coming back.
Okay, it's back.
It is not working?
Now it's back.
Now it's back, okay. Sir.
Now it is back. Okay, okay.
Yes.
It's working.
Okay.
It's working now.
Okay, thank you. So, in fact, it is a very, very important aspect. You see, friends, many of us have negative emotions, negativities within us. If we are able to discern our negative emotions, the negative issues within us, we will be able to overcome it in a more constructive way. So self-awareness is extremely important. And with that, when we are talking of intrapersonal communication, here we are talking of intrapersonal communication. So when we are talking of intrapersonal communication, it essentially entails our self-talk and our inner dialogue. So the imagined inner dialogue with, say, a friend or anyone. What is important is that we need to work closely. We need to work constantly on how our intrapersonal communication remains constructive in nature and not destructive. Because, you know, I always remember this, you know, beautiful quote of the Venerable Thich Nhat Hanh, who says, peace within oneself, peace in the world. Simple, very simple. If there is a turmoil within me, if my intrapersonal communication is in turmoil, if there is a destructive intrapersonal communication, then it gets reflected in the outer world. So that is a very, very important aspect of nonviolent communication, to ensure that my self-talk and inner dialogue remains constructive in nature. The next important element of nonviolent communication is the use of appropriate and positive language. Extremely important, an expansion of our emotional vocabulary. You see, many times what happens is that if we are in a rush with someone, we are having a problem with someone, we may not find those appropriate words or positive language. We will think of only those negative languages. But if we start to expand our vocabulary with, you know, appropriate positive words, positive languages, and we are able to express our feelings likewise, then our communication, the communication process, the whole form of communication becomes more positive in nature, because language is the key. And actually, as someone says, that language is something which can create conflicts. Language is something we need to really take care of. Here, there are two important quotes which I would like to share with you. The first one is by Gandhi, and he says, let us be clear regarding the language we use and the thoughts we nurture. For what is language but the expression of thought? Let your thought be accurate and truthful, and it will hasten the advent of Swaraj, even if the whole world is against you. And the second quote is by Archbishop Desmond Tutu. And Desmond Tutu says, language is very powerful. Language does not just describe quality. Language creates the reality it describes. We should try to take responsibility of our action, words, and feelings and not blame others for this. So friends, we all realize how important is language, how important is the word that we are using. We need to be critically able to introspect every time we end up using something which is not very possibly civil in nature, or how we handle situation where someone else is, coming up with a barrage of negative words and languages against us. So that is something we need to work constantly on this aspect. The next important element of nonviolent communication is avoidance of stereotypes. Again, friends, stereotyping actually leads to a dysfunctional communication. Well, let us see, in most cultures across the world, we will find that if someone's pocket has been picked in a street and there is some, street children or, those homeless people around, the first thing in most of the cultures, I'm saying, in the world, they will say that, well, this must be the person who might have, done that. So even if that is something which is a stereotype, that is a labeling that we have done possibly over a period of time. So in case we want to have any kind of engagement with people in the streets or homeless people, many situations that comes as something which is a break, that comes as an obstacle to our communication process. So most of the situations of when we start labeling people from different cultures, different groups, different communities, different areas, when we start stereotyping, that brings in the dysfunctional communication system. So the important is how we avoid these stereotypes. Next important element, which are the start of these altruistic tendencies, which we can say, the first one being empathy. Well, I remember this very important quote by the former American President Barack Obama in 2008, when he said that there seems to be empathy deficit in the world. Well, empathy is something, especially in the context of this pandemic that we are going through, how important it is to develop our skills of empathy, to be able to engage with people, to be able to connect with people, how we put ourselves into the shoes of the other person deeply and try to understand what the other person is going through, and how we would have reacted if we were in that particular situation. So empathy, something, I was reading this beautiful book by Rifkin's on the need for an empathy revolution in the world. We need to work to develop our skills of empathy, and that is an important element of nonviolent communication for deeper connections with people. The next important altruistic tendencies, which is part of the nonviolent communication, is compassion, trying to understand the sufferings of others. And compassion is something which can be learned, from by every one of us. And also, when we see in many situations what happens is that if we try to see a particular thing from only a single perspective, but the more compassionate we are able to develop wider angles, wider perspective to things. We are able to understand the things of the other person. I will give you an example. There is one particular university here in India, and some of their students, I was trying to, mentor them some years back. In fact, I can tell you the name of that university, the Aligarh Muslim University. And there were these girl students over there, and they said that you see, in many parts of the world, in many of the cities across, when there's so much of population, you see the simple house sparrows they don't have any space for making their, nests or house. And they're somehow short of disappearing in many of these big cities. So these girls we were discussing, and we felt what is important is that we must develop something. So then we started looking at the net and try to see how we can make a sparrow nest. And these girl students, in front of their hostel, they made a sparrow box, and so that the sparrows could come and stay there. And also they were giving them, turn wise, they were giving them food and water and all those things. So also you see, this is a compassion and a symbolic non-violent communication with these sparrows. It is an act of communication when they are trying to, reach out to these sparrows and helping them with their nest where they're not finding anything in a big city. So importance of compassion, and compassion for everyone, not just other human beings. As I said, the whole notion of non-violent communication relies on the importance of human interconnectedness. The next important aspect of the altruistic tendency is the importance of gratitude, thanking people for what they have done, how you have benefited on a particular count. Importance of gratitude, thanking people and situations on that. And if you see all these altruistic tendencies like, gratitude, compassion, empathy, they are all linked to the neurosciences of the brain. And the more you express empathy, the more compassionate you are, the more, you have this experience of, expressing gratitude. There are so many psychological studies which have been done, and it shows that if you're practicing these more, then it helps you in overcoming in your stress factor. It contributes to our well-being. Flexibility and openness in our communication. Again, an extremely important element of nonviolent communication. You see, when there is a dysfunctional communication, think of a situation, you have a fight with someone. Most of the times what happens, whether with your friends, whether in the community or many situations, why a particular conflict goes out of proportion? Because probably both the parties or a single party, they're not flexible, they're not open. They don't want to communicate. They think that the position they're taking is the ultimate position and the other party is absolutely wrong. So whenever we come to a situation where we are not flexible, we are not open to the perspectives of others, then there becomes some problematic things. So flexibility and openness in our communication is very, very important. The next important element of nonviolent communication is connecting with needs of others. Here I will give you an example. You see, again, I was taking this session with the judicial officers, and my session was being chaired by a very senior judge of the Delhi High Court. On this count, she gave an example. She said that there was a litigation going on in a court between a brother and a sister, and she was not able to fathom on the real issues on which this litigation was going on. So she possibly in the to see if something could be done to mediate between the brother and the sister, she called the sister first to her chamber. And then she said that she had a long conversation with the sister, and she was trying to unearth on what exactly was the reason on which this whole case had evolved and come to the court. Then the honorable judge said that she felt that the lady, who was elder than her brother, she felt that her brother and her sister-in-law did not adequately respect her. And that was the small micro issue which had blown out of proportion and had landed both the brother and the sister in the court. So many of the conflicts, actually, what happens is that when we are not able to connect to the needs of the other person, we don't know because of which she or he is behaving in a particular manner, then that whole issue gets blown out of proportion. So connecting with needs of others is an extremely important element. The next important element is active and deep listening skills. For this, let us listen to our friend Advaita, what Advaita is saying. So let us listen to what Advaita is saying. She's a girl, she's a student here in India, and she has this for us to listen to on the importance of listening. Let us listen to Advaita. Listening.
Hello, I'm Advaita Jayaram. I'm your average design student from the city of Bangalore, but what makes me different is that I know now how to communicate more efficiently thanks to the orientation course on nonviolent communication by Gandhi Smriti and Darshan Samiti. Now, I'd like to share that knowledge with all of you, with special emphasis on a certain key skill that everyone must acquire. Before I say what it is, I'd like to ask you one simple question. Have you ever gotten into an argument with anyone before? It could be anyone at all. Your loved ones, your friends, your relatives, even people that you met for the first time. From my personal experience, I can tell that the answer to that question would be yes, and that it would definitely have happened more than once in your life. Now, I'd like you to recall it and think back to the flow of the conversation. If you recall very carefully, you'll realize something, that it wasn't a conversation at all, but two people monologuing. Here's the thing, there is one crucial difference between a true conversation and a monologue, and that is that a conversation only happens when both people listen to each other. Now think back to that conversation and try and see how much more peaceful it would have been if both of you took the time and effort to listen to each other. I'm confident that you, like me, will have now realized how important listening is to the art of conversation. Hence, as someone who has benefited tremendously from making just this one change in the way I interact with people, I urge you to do the same and practice listening in your daily life to make your life more peaceful, satisfying, and fulfilling. Nonviolent communication can help you achieve all this and more, and I'm personally so thankful to have come across it in my life. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So this was our friend Advaita. Now we go to the last few slides of this presentation. So now the PowerPoint is visible, friends.
Yes,
Hello?
sir.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Yes, sir, it is visible.
Well, the last two elements of nonviolent communications, avoidance of moralistic judgments. You see, what happens is that many times we get attuned to make judgments. You know, like say, for instance, in a school football team. So one of you is a player, and you have not been able to score a goal for a number of matches, and the coach yells at you. You are totally useless. You need to be thrown out of the team. You don't have any idea on how you can be a player. You can never be a player. Like these moralistic judgments, moral values you try to push. So the player becomes further demotivated. But the same thing, the coach could have said that, well, I know you are struggling, you are trying your very best, you are working hard to score a goal, and I'm sure in the next match you will be performing much better. So that actually pumps up the player to do more practice and possibly contribute further. So moralistic, in fact, I remember Dr. Marshall Rosenberg, one of the person in the Western world, who had promoted the whole idea of nonviolent communication. And in fact, I remember his book, The Nonviolent Communication and Language of Life. And in its introduction, he says that he got this idea of promotion of nonviolent communication from Mahatma Gandhi's Satyagraha. So Dr. Rosenberg says that moralistic judgments is something life alienating. It alienates people. It is a demotivating factor. Next important element is avoidance of negative evaluative language. Again, say in a pandemic, you see, I was having this session, one of the initial stages of the pandemic with a group in Bangladesh last year. And there was this college professor who was there, and he said that, you see, he had a major fight with his wife in the morning. We were having this session in probably in the evening. So he had a big fight with his wife. And then we started having this conversation with the professor. He was from Dhaka. And then possibly he said that, no, you know, some of these words that they're like, say, for instance, we are all holed up in our house because of the lockdown and all, and we can't move out. So, you know, different situations. So if, say, the wife is doing some work and the husband is not contributing in any way, it is possible the wife shouts at him, "You're lazy," and things like that, and then the husband shouts back. And it could be also in the context of you know, the brother and sisters, where the sister is trying to do some work in the household and a brother is lazing around the sofa. They will say that, "Hey, you lazy person," this and that. So all these things are negative evaluative language. And in fact, that Bangladesh professor, the professor said that after we had a detailed discussions and conversation on the situation and the words that were used between the husband and the wife, felt that he could have possibly you know, handled the situation in a much better way. And the thing was not at all that big, because of which that fight took place. So, of course, as I said, that conflicts or these kind of things are something which are organic in nature. We can't, it is not a utopian situation that if I say that there cannot be any conflict in the world or conflict in my life or with my family or something like that. But how we handle them is something very important. And so all these 12 important elements of nonviolent communication, possibly we need to work, you know, as an individual, day in and day out, to see how we can use them in our daily life. In the next few slides, we will just try to focus on the strategies of nonviolent communication and how it helps in the resolution of conflicts. Here, we are talking about how important nonviolent communication is pivotal. Because when we are in a situation of conflicts, what happens is that there are negative emotions that comes into play between the two conflicting parties. There is a negative energy that is there, negative perceptions that comes in. So when we are attuned to using nonviolent communication, it is likely that we are able to address these causes of conflict in a much better way. Also, when we are talking of peace building, you know, mostly in a post-conflict situations. So what are the important points that are there to be looked at? You know, how we address the root causes of the conflict, how we reconcile with the differences, how we normalize the relationships. In that context also, because you see the key is communication. And there, when we are using some of these techniques and strategies of nonviolent communication, we will be able to go for these desired goals. In fact, when we are talking of these peace building processes, sorry, one second. So when we are talking of communication and you know, in the context of conflict, it is so important in the context of conflict prevention, early warning and response, conflict monitoring, community peace building, and very important in the post-conflict peace processes, because the entire thing hinges on communication. So we have to see, here is a very interesting thing that has been written, an academic paper by this person who is working on peace building from Kenya. She's Rahima Zaid Obuyi, and she has recently written a paper on enhancing the capacities in nonviolent communication to change perceptions and addressing root, proximate and tertiary causes of the Ethiopia's Tigrid crisis. So she has especially taken the Ethiopian crisis, the Tigrid crisis, and she has tried to analyze and put into perspective on how nonviolent communication can be used to change these perceptions and address the root causes. It's a very interesting paper written by Rahima. And in fact, what she has used in her paper, friends, is in fact, she has cited my own papers I have written for several journals, which I found. She has cited, and she has cited also the 5 pillars of the Gandhian non-violence that we were talking about. She has talked about managing negative and destructive emotions, how to mend a dysfunctional communication ecosystem. And also what she has pointed out is that like in the context of the Gacaca courts in Rwanda, which we all know, the Rwanda genocide, and then how the whole process of reconciliation between the the two communities there. And what Rahima is saying and underlining in her academic paper is talking about how the Oromia, the Ethiopian traditional justice system, along with these techniques of nonviolent communication, could help change the situation. So there are so many different possibilities I wanted to share with you, because this was something which is in the context of the present conflict that is going on. So in the context of situations of conflicts, what happens is that how important it is in the context of what Rahima was talking about. In the situations of conflict, what we have to communicate with the local population. We have to win the support for peace and reconciliation, for democratization of the rule of the law. And if there has to be a peace settlement, we need to think about how to convince people of its goal and how to make them our allies. And here comes the importance of the strategies of using non-violent communication. So these are something which actually helps them on how we can ensure a continuous communication flow between different stakeholders of the conflict, and how we use the traditional and the new tools, and especially integrate it with these techniques of nonviolent communication, and how we, in that context, how we are able to build the bridges of friendship and the bridges of engagement with the conflicting parties. That is something very important. In this context, especially in the context of our personal, individual conflict situations, how we handle using the techniques of nonviolent communication. Here is one small video we show of Jyoti. So we will show this video where Jyoti talks about how she has been using the techniques of nonviolent communication to handle her personal issues.
Role of communication in bridge building. Let's listen to Jyoti on how to handle personal issues through nonviolent communication. Please visit our website for the free online course on nonviolent communication. Quiz. Participants can join at
now.
Hello everyone, my name is Jyoti and I am a PhD student of Political Science from Banasthali Vidyapeeth, Rajasthan, and I had done an orientation course on non-violent communication from Gandhi Smriti and Darshan Samiti, New Delhi. And I would like to share my experience with you all that before getting introduced with the course, I was struggling with small problems in my life, but getting acquainted with non-violent communication and importance of peace, I am now able to resolve small or big conflicts at my personal level as well as at my societal level, and this has helped me to maintain balance in my life and stay focused and determined towards my goals. And right now I'm able to utilize my energy in something good and creative work than I used to than wasting it on what people are saying and continue indulge myself in arguments, etc. So I think this is the need of our time, and I don't think that Other than peace and non-violent communication, we are left with any other option to better our lives at national or international level. So I feel grateful that I had attended this course, and I'm still practicing it and learning day by day. And I have stopped being a moralistic judge, because I used to judge people earlier before meeting, but this all these things had gone away from my life, and I am trying to give more respect to others' opinions and views, and am able to appreciate and accept people the way they are, and trying to incorporate their views and my views to give a comprehensive conclusion, and all these are helping me a lot. Thank you so much.
Thank you. So this was Jyoti, where she was trying to talk about her own personal experience of using non-violent communication. Well, now there's few last slides before we go for. I would request. I would like to ask Professor Gomes, sir, whether will there be any break in between, or what would be the way, because we have some quiz also for the participants and the discussions forum. So what would be the format now? Sir, can you hear me, sir?
Yeah, we'll leave it with you, Veda. So whatever that usually
whether you want to have a break or we continue and finish.
We will have a break usually after an hour and a half. So
okay. So how many minutes after how many minutes do we have a break?
The break is so the break is after an hour and a half. So you have actually come up to an hour and a half already. So if you wish, you can take a 15-minute break now.
Okay. So after 15 minutes, we can actually then start with the quiz possibly.
Yes, indeed. Yes. This if it's all right with you, is that okay with you?
No, as you say, sir, I am comfortable for everything. I am comfortable if the participants feel that I should continue. I am comfortable with that also. I can go on, no issues. So as per the wishes of the participants and you, we will continue. There is no issues at all. I am comfortable in both the scenarios, sir.
Veda, is this an example of non-violent communication?
No, sir. Like I am comfortable. Even if you want me to have a session and interaction for 2.5 hours, 3 hours, I'm ready for that also. And also, in case you feel there should be 15 minutes break for the participants, that also.
I think let's. I think.
And the convenience, I think, of the participants, that is something very important.
Yeah, I think it's entirely up to you. So if you feel that you want to have a 15-minute break, usually we have a 15-minute
possibly,
break.
sir, in that context, I think we should request the participants to share their views in case they want to continue and we finish in the next 1 hour, so that there will be no break. That is also fine with me. Absolutely.
So participants, what would you like to do?
Because now onwards there will be no lecture. It is all going to be, discussion. So I have some interesting discussion.
Okay. So why don't we give them a bit of a break, and then we can come back. Is that okay with you?
Okay. So 10 minutes.
Yeah, 10 to 15 minutes. Is that all right? That's our usual time for a break. Would that be okay? Would that be okay for you?
So fine with me, no issues. 15 minutes is absolutely fine with me.
So we'll give a break of 15 minutes. So participants.
So in that, do we log out, sir? We log out for 15 minutes?
No, you can stay there. We will move you to another room. So just stay in the main room. Sorry, I should say. And participants, we will resume. Let's say at 1:45. Is that right? Does that give it 15 minutes? Mas
Yes,
Ali?
sir.
Right. Yes, Rob.
Mas Ari, what time shall we resume after the break? 15.
After the